Spider ball pythons have been quite the hot topic recently in the reptile community. A lot of people don't know what spider ball pythons are or what the controversy is around them. So we'll get into that at a certain part in the video. Basically the tea is some expos in Europe have banned the sale of spider ball pythons at their events. And so the unofficial face of the reptile community, Brian Barczyk, has come out in defense of this morph. Now, it's not like this is a big surprise. He's been selling spider ball pythons on his site forever, but it's kind of an extra big deal of the fact that he not only has just been passively selling them himself, but he actually made an entire video talking about why this was such a problem. You might be able to guess from the title of this video, I personally disagree. And yes, I'm some random 18-year-old on YouTube. I've been making videos half the time he has. I've been keeping reptiles many fewer years, and I do not have thousands of animals behind me. So take that as you will, but hopefully you can hear me out on this video and hear what other people are talking about in the community as to why he is wrong. Now, what actually is the spider morph and why is this a problem? Well, I'm sure you know what a snake morph is. Basically, it makes an animal look different. A morph is something that started out as a mutation in an animal, so you're just randomly breeding and then all of a sudden this one animal looks kind of weird. Maybe it looks cool, maybe it looks even uglier, but those then cool mutations continue to be bred so that you can keep creating them, and then they become a morph. That's a very simple explanation, but that's not what this video is about. And so spider ball pythons are one of those. Somebody found a unique looking mutation, they were like, this looks pretty cool, I want to start selling them, so they figured out how to breed them and continued producing them, which Brian talked about in his video. Now, different morphs will have different traits. Some have different colors, some have different patterns, some have no color at all, some have no pattern at all. And these can be found in snakes and lizards and turtles and pretty much any reptile or amphibian that is commonly sold in the community. So why does the spider ball python differ? Well, let's go ahead and see how Brian Barczyk actually defines the spider trait and the issues that come along with it.
Is that they have somewhat of a little bit of a neurological problem. Do you see this animal? Its head doesn't move quite right, has a little bit of a tilt. Some are worse than others, and it's basically called a spider wobble.
So he said there is somewhat of a little bit of a neurological issue. That's a lot of adjectives to describe this teeny tiny little issue that he's talking about. And it's true that there is a ton of variation. You'll see some spider ball pythons where you can't tell that there's anything wrong at all, and meanwhile others look much more serious.
And this spinner here, which is the spider pinstripe, is a perfect example. It's got a little bit more of a shaky head thing going on. When it moves, it does corkscrew a little bit, but nothing true dramatic.
He said this spinner is a perfect example. He's got a little bit of a shaky head. If you ask me, that's not at all a perfect example. He just said it only has a little bit of a shaky head. I would say saying that this spinner is a perfect example of the spider gene is like saying that my turtle Franklin is a perfect example for metabolic bone disease. This is when an animal's bones, or in this case its shell, is not, calm down please. It's when it's not developed correctly because of incorrect husbandry. So for Franklin's first years of his life before I had him, he was kept in incorrect conditions, which we don't have to get into in this video. And you can see there's different lumps. It's kind of hard to see on camera. There's like a lump that kind of goes down there, a divot here, around the front it kind of arches down weirdly. This is not a perfect example. Here, I'll show you some pictures of perfect examples of metabolic bone disease. They look awful, they look terrifying and disgusting. This does not mean that Franklin's shell is perfect and that it's okay, but compared to the severe cases or the common cases, this is nothing. This is like, it doesn't affect his life. He's completely fine. You cannot argue that this is a perfect example for something where the problem barely even shows up here. And that goes for the same with my own spider ball python. Someone gave it to me a few months ago, they couldn't keep it, so it was shipped down to us. So normally animals like this we would sell or rehome, which whoever gives us the animals knows that. But because we refused to sell spider ball pythons, we ended up keeping it ourselves. My friend Ethan also has his own, and he did his own video on spider ball pythons a while ago. My spider, it turns out, is even worse when it comes to just how it is affected. Comparing mine to Brian's perfect example with a little bit of a head wobble, this one on the other hand shows some of the more serious issues of the spider gene. He has horrible balance and can do very little compared to a normal ball python. Him just moving around, you can see he doesn't really know exactly where he's going. He doesn't pay attention much, he'll just fall off of whatever there is. Now from what me and many others have seen, ball pythons often get a lot out of enrichment where they can climb around and explore different areas. A snake moving around too much is usually a sign of incorrect husbandry, but in cases of perfect husbandry and an appropriate setup and care, a snake can enjoy moving around at times. But unfortunately, as soon as my spider ball python starts climbing or moving around, he has no balance and starts to just fall off of everything. When you're holding him, he is constantly upside down, and he also has trouble feeding. Again, I'll go more into detail as to why it matters that he's upside down and why that even makes a difference. But some examples of feeding is his aim is terrible, meaning that there's a higher chance that he's going to hit something that is not food and damage himself. So you have to be really careful if he's fed inside the enclosure, which is ideal because people have learned that you really should not take animals out of their enclosure to feed them. But when the aim is as bad as this spider ball python, it can be an issue. People might argue that you're just not preparing the food well enough, it's not warm enough, it doesn't have a strong enough scent, so we can't find where it is. But we've now gone through 18 ball pythons here that have been cared for, all the exact same, and the spider has just so much trouble doing this. In fact, a couple weeks ago, he started eating himself. You might be like, how is that related to the spider gene? Well, he was going for the food, he completely missed, hit the ground, thought he ended up with the mouse in his mouth, but he didn't, so he went ahead and coiled up as if he was going to constrict the mouse, and his teeth got caught onto the side of his stomach. And so this poor spider ball python has his own teeth embedded in the side of his own stomach, as he thinks there's food in his mouth, but I think he also thought he was like being attacked by the food, because every time he would feel his own teeth inside him, he would just start biting and constricting harder, and he was really panicking. So after a few minutes, we were able to get his teeth unstuck. Thankfully, there was no blood or anything, but that's just an example of one of the weird things that has happened to him simply because he has a spider wobble, which is apparently just this.
It's got a little bit more of a shaky head thing going on.
So he then said, if you breed animals that have the least amount of wobble, typically the offspring will come out with the least amount as well. The keyword here is typically. Unfortunately, typically does not mean always, and there are still those flukes where occasionally spider ball pythons are just even worse, no matter how careful the breeder is. So maybe both parents are perfectly fine, fine in quotes, they might still wobble around, maybe they still have some trouble eating, or maybe they are just about perfect. But their spider child still might have an extremely severe wobble. Again, that's not a usual thing, but you know that there is that possibility every time a spider is produced. Here's my favorite argument. Let's go ahead and tackle the worst argument against spider ball python bans, and that are the people that are saying,
by not breeding spiders, that's like saying you're discriminating against people who might have genetic defects in their children. You would never tear away the right of a human to have a child because it might have a genetic defect. And does that mean we should euthanize autistic people? I can't
even say it seriously because it's so stupid. Does that mean we're gonna like euthanize autistic people and kids with physical deformations just because they have this? Well, first of all, nobody wants to euthanize spider ball pythons. We'll get onto that in a second. Second of all, breeding a snake does not equal a human having the enjoyment and having the pleasure of having their own child and raising it. A ball python does not care if it breeds. And trying to blame a breeder for not breeding a certain snake because it's like a human not being allowed to have a child makes no logical sense. And unfortunately, this is the most common argument ever. But so, like, keep in mind here, I do not breed. We hope to breed in the future, but the animals behind me are not, for some reason, being discriminated against because I'm not breeding them. It's just because they're not being bred. People don't breed their snakes for the sake of the snake. In fact, breeding can be dangerous. Like in rare cases, females can have issues while giving birth. They can become egg-bound or other issues, which usually it's worth the risk to do that because you get more snakes in the end. Not a single breeder on earth breeds because they feel like they're doing their snakes they're giving them some privilege, and it's because they wanted to breed. It's because they want either 1, baby snakes, 2, money from those baby snakes, or both. A human having a child is just a human that wants a child. Okay, we're done here. I'm not going on with this because this is so stupid.
Now, I totally understand the people that say, like, listen, I don't want to breed anything that has some kind of a genetic defect. A wobble with the spider is a genetic defect. The thing is that there's a lot of genetic defects when you start breeding animals. Hey, look at anyone that is into dogs or cats, for that instance, understand that a lot of the dog breeds and cat breeds have genetic defaults that go along with them.
This is where he just automatically assumes anyone against a spider ball python is not against a dog or cat breeder. Personally, I hate dog breeders with a passion. I despise them. I think they're kind of idiots. That's aside the point. That's just my opinion. That does not cover all defenders of the snake ban. But essentially, for some reason, he's just saying that, oh, everybody thinks it's okay to breed, say, pugs, which can like basically not even breathe because their faces are so mushed up. Or other dog breeds, I don't know many by name, that have other issues. No, I'm gonna argue for both. let's not breed those, and let's also not breed this. However, there are also just many other morphs that have different sort of little issues here and there. We're gonna get into this later. I know I keep saying we're gonna get into stuff later, but I'm trying to like keep it kind of chronological with his video. But an example is back in the day, people still actually get angry because I own some albino animals. My corn snake, I have an albino corn snake. I have an albino leopard gecko, stuff like that. And people say that albinism is something that should not be bred, primarily because it makes them more sensitive to light with both their skin to UV and their eyes just to brightness in general. And that's a whole argument within itself. So there's obviously a big spectrum here of where do we like draw the line, and this is something that Brian gets very passionate about.
So they decided that they were gonna kind of play the biggest power and say, we can take away your right to choose whether you ever want one of these absolutely gorgeous animals in your life.
He basically goes on and says, who chooses what is and is not a defect? And he gives examples, like I just mentioned the albino. He said scaleless Texas rat snakes shouldn't be bred without scales because it can't protect itself. That's an argument against them.
Take, for instance, a scaleless Texas rat snake right here. Some people literally think that this is a defect that shouldn't be bred because it doesn't have scales. They basically say, hey, listen, the fact that it doesn't have scales means that it can't protect itself and it's an abomination and you shouldn't be able to breed it. My point is that who gets the right to decide that?
So if you don't know, scaleless snakes are a whole another big debate. Essentially, they are literally bred without scales. I've seen some scaleless head ball pythons in person myself, which is where they have scales all over their body except for on their head. But there are also some scaleless snakes that have no scales whatsoever. The Texas rat snakes are an example, and based on all of the research, which is essentially just people caring for them, it looks like scaleless Texas rat snakes can be raised just fine, they eat just fine, they're completely healthy, they have no issues, and they can live a happy and full life. Personally, again, just my personal opinion, I think scaleless animals are just ugly, but that doesn't matter here. I don't know why I even added that in. And then scaleless ball pythons are a whole nother issue, which he did not mention scaleless ball pythons, possibly because they don't do too well. But again, this is him talking about basically where do we draw the line? Do we draw the line, for my example, at albino animals? Do we draw it at scaleless animals, at spiders, or what else? I just thought this was funny. He said that
they're a two-headed snake. They are definitely an abomination. They are a mutant. They are a freak of nature, so to speak. And I'm sorry, I don't like to use that term, but
Brian, you literally just titled a video Freak of Nature. What are you talking about? Okay, that's not related. Let's move on. Should they be euthanized? That's where I get upset because nobody should decide what's best for you or your animals.
Should they be euthanized immediately because someone thinks like, oh my gosh, they shouldn't be alive, they're suffering, those poor two heads are fighting each other? That's where I get really upset because, again, no one should decide what is right for you or your animals or anything like that as long as the animals are being cared for.
One, nobody wants them to get euthanized. If they do, I'll defend you with that. No, don't euthanize them, just raise them as they can be unless their quality of life is so bad that they are suffering and that they would be better off dead. And that does happen with some snakes that are born. Like, maybe it's just this like really unhealthy thing that can't eat and can't move and is clearly in pain. Then yeah, obviously I think most people are gonna agree that we should euthanize that. And maybe there are some spiders that are so bad that they can't even survive and that they should be euthanized. I hope there aren't. I haven't seen many of those, or if any actually. Hopefully that's not the case. But then he said, why should other people decide what's best for you and your animals? Well, that's equivalent to saying that the authorities or like child protective services should not get a say of what's best for you or your child. It's because people are gonna have very differing opinions and different motives of their own that do not line up with human morals. So yes, other people should have something to say with you and your things when those things are living animals.
That as long as the animals are being cared for. It's not like the spider ball pythons are born and have some heinous thing that they can't actually thrive. The truth is that that mutation has thrived for over 25 years. Trust me guys, this is a slippery slope. Once this happens, what gets banned next? Is a piebald an abomination because it couldn't live in the wild? If this was out in the wild, that white would mean that a predator would have to attack it. I know I might be going a little extreme there.
That's very extreme. Who should we ban? This snake that presumably often suffers because it doesn't know up from down? Or this colorful boy, because if you threw him out in the wild, he would die because he'd be eaten by something because he's bright white. He knew himself here that didn't make any sense. I don't know why he included it, but I'm including it too, because yeah, that was weird.
Take for instance super cinnamons. They have a bulbous nose. Sometimes they even come out with kinks. Does that mean we should immediately ban cinnamon ball python?
If you ask me, we actually should. I don't know if that's the answer he meant for me to give, but Yeah, like, have you seen Super Cinnamons?
We have kinks galore. I think that one is going to have to be humanely euthanized. I don't think it's going to be able to use the restroom. The kink's so bad back by the cloaca, it's like bent backwards.
And for context, a cinnamon ball python is one morph, and a super cinnamon is when you breed those two cinnamons together. You could end up with a super cinnamon, which often look like this. This is a video from someone that, for some reason, purposefully bred them. And this one is so horrendously bad that there's no way it's gonna survive, and it's gonna have to be euthanized. And again, there are a lot of different morphs that cause lots of different things, whether it's just the color, just the pattern, or something mental, like the spider, or physical, like the super cinnamon. And it sounds like he doesn't want to consider banning any of them just because there are so many. When if you ask me, I think we need to look at every single one that might have an issue. Like if somebody realizes there is this issue, everybody as a group or as a community should look at this and be like, does the positive outweigh the negative? And the only positive with any morph is 1, it looks cool, or 2, it's worth money. Pretty much any physical or mental issue to me is more serious than whether you can sell it for a profit or look at it and be like, hey, that looks pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm not saying things that are obvious. I mean, if there's a mutation of a snake or something like that that obviously is lethal or really causes the animal to not thrive, absolutely we should police ourselves and we should decide not to produce those animals. We shouldn't have to be told by somebody to not produce these animals or that they can't be sold.
We should be policing ourselves as a hobby and a market. Market, that's an important term here. The market are the people that spend money on a thing. The market is what determines pretty much every business. To ask businesses to police themselves is probably the most dangerous thing you can possibly do. Look at anything. Like, I'm guessing a lot of us here care about the environment because we care about animals. Think about if oil or gas companies policed themselves. Even if the CEO is like, I like the environment, it's pretty cool. I like trees. Trees are cool. They're there for money. Their business is for money. They're gonna do whatever they can to get as much money as physically possible. They don't care what they destroy, how much they get, what they do to get that oil, etc. They are not going to police themselves, and obviously that's much more extreme than breeding snakes, but this is also for business. To run your business, you need money. To make money, you sell things. You're gonna sell the things that make the most money. For example, normal ball pythons. Many people love normals. I personally think they're beautiful, but they're worth like nothing. They're dirt cheap. You can get them for under 50 bucks. People don't breed normals on purpose because there are so many normals and you're not gonna be able to sell them. Spider ball pythons, on the other hand, are flying off the shelves like crazy. Morph Market is a place that you can buy lots of different breeds and morphs of reptiles. Actually, I'll just pull it up right now. This is not a Morph Market plug or anything. It's a cool site though, I guess, if you wanted to use it, whatever, who cares. And under ball pythons, you can look by different ones. So normal ball pythons, there's 32 available. Yeah, there's a few. Xanthics, there's 185. Albinos, there's 400. That's quite a few. Lessers, there are 800. That's quite a few. And spider ball pythons, there are 1,300. That is terrifying. That tells you just how much demand and supply there is. But these things are flying off the shelves, literal shelves, because they probably use rack systems, and they are a lot. 300, 225, 150. Those are the cheapest. Oh, there's BHBs. Look at that. Just found BHBs on here. And how much are they going for? 650, 500, 300, 300, 300, 300, 400, and then other. BHB is actually selling the most expensive ones on here. The point here is they're worth hella bread, and you're gonna be breeding these if they're making you money. Myself included. Like, if we end up breeding ball pythons someday, we're gonna try and target this expensive morphs. Not spiders, we're not gonna sell spiders. But what's the point if it's equally as easy to breed a normal as it is this other thing, if it's worth more money? Not to mention, a lot of these spiders look like they're dying. I don't think that's related to that. But if you're on Morph Market, just side note, be careful. A lot of these breeders don't seem to have much quality control. That's actually, BHBs look good on here though, so yeah, first of all, policing ourselves. Yeah, that's not gonna work. I think we all know that. We're in denial if we think that companies are going to police themselves. But second of all, it's all about market, like he said. If the market wants to buy them, let the market buy them. The market doesn't know about spiders. I have, a decently sized channel where I get to talk to a lot of people, and every time I post anything about a spider, I get probably like 25 to 50 people that ask, what's wrong with the spider? Because nobody knows. Nobody really talks about it that much. Finally, one of the biggest YouTubers in reptiles talks about it, and all he does is defends it. So it's not anywhere. Like, pull up BHB's site, look at the spider page, there's nothing about it. You cannot blame the person buying it that it's their fault for not knowing, because yes, you can find this information, but people don't know to look for it. If it was my first time getting a ball python, I'm just gonna, like, obviously I'm gonna read care guides, but none of the care guides mention anything about spiders or different morphs having issues. So it would be different if everything was crystal clear, if there was a disclaimer like, spiders have this issue, you should know about it, are you sure you want to buy it? Even then, personally, I don't think that's enough. I think that it's a good thing to not sell them entirely, but that would at least be a step to see if the market would change their mind if they knew about them. Of course, there are those people that love the spider wobble, it's so cute, oh my god, I can't get over it. And every time I post my spider, I get a couple of those unironically, and I'm like, please be quiet. I don't say that, I don't respond. I leave those people on red. Sorry. So yes, there are going to be people that seek out the spider wobble because for some reason they get some enjoyment out of seeing a snake wiggle. What are people doing?
What if I sell a spider ball python in the UK? Do I go to jail? I don't even know what the ban means.
So answer this poll. Should Brian go to jail? That's a joke. Okay, I don't think he should go to jail. I DM'd the International Herp Society just to see what they had to say about Brian's video, and they said, are we bothered about what the Americans think? Probably not. And then they reiterated that the ban is only for expos and they cannot control what the seller sells outside of an expo. So, yeah, roasted. That would make some good clickbait though. You should go to jail, because then you could come out and be like, I got arrested for selling snakes, and that would get a lot of views. Okay. I'll collab with you on that. And then for once you would not be clickbaiting, because it would be true. So then Brian was talking about Enigma leopard geckos, which he said that he decided not to breed.
And it also has a wobble issue to it. This animal is actually pretty good, and we have a handful of Enigmas that we just have in the collection that actually aren't too bad, but we made a decision not to breed the Enigmas in the future. And it's just something that we decided, hey, there's other mutations that are very similar to Enigma, we'll just go ahead and work with them, things like white and yellows, that make things that look almost the same, so why produce the Enigma? Again, we decided on our own. We didn't have to be told by anyone to do it.
You decided on your own because there was one very similar. There's nothing similar to a spider ball python. So if you ask me, personally, I'm adding lots of disclaimers of what I'm about to say, but it sounds like my understanding is the only reason Brian stopped breeding the Enigma is because there's one that looks like it. Which means that he's putting the beauty of it over the issue at hand. So it sounds like if there was something that looked almost the same as a spider, then he would breed that instead of a spider. That's my guess at least. But it sounds like if there was not that morph that looked like an Enigma, just taking a guess, I don't know if this is true, it sounds like he would still breed the Enigma and just ignore the head wobble, just because there's nothing that looks like it, which again is a form of just putting the beauty or the money over the welfare of the animal. Then he talked about bearded dragons. He said this hobby policed itself and stopped breeding them because of health issues. Scaleless bearded dragons, just a lot like scaleless snakes, don't have scales. First of all, can we talk about how disgusting they look? Ew, look at this. That's so gross. Side, that's not related, okay. So it is true that thankfully most bearded dragon breeders do not sell the scaleless, because they're gross. No, that's not why. It's because they do have issues throughout their life with their skin because they're scaleless. But I had no problem finding plenty of scaleless bearded dragons for sale all over the internet. A lot of them are out of stock. I don't know if that's because they can't breed them fast enough or it's because they're cutting back on them. But either way, they're everywhere. It looks to me like even if some of them police themselves, most certainly not all of them have. Just like how I'm sure there are people that maybe they did breed spiders at some point, but they did end up policing themselves and stopped. Meanwhile, there's others that are just going and going and going. Again, at North Carolina Repticons, there was not a single ball python breeder. We were selling there, so I could check. I had plenty of time. I went to every single booth multiple times. Not a single person, except for us selling ball pythons, did not have spiders. Every single one had spiders. Some were only spiders. The banners on their things, it was spiders. They were everywhere. No disclaimers, lots of money. Thousands of dollars for these. Obviously there are some for hundreds, but once they get fancier, they're worth a lot, and they were selling. We were there all weekend, spiders were selling, and I'm sure very few people actually knew what the problem was. Okay, so then Brian did actually mention the albino corn snakes. He said the first mutation sold were considered lethal.
And in the very beginning, mutations like albino, snow, striped corn, all kinds of mutations originally were considered to potentially be lethal because they were really weak. And then generation after generation of outbreeding and getting new bloodline, now they're a mainstay staple.
And that's great. I actually didn't know that. I learned that from this video. So I'm still being educated by Brian. Yay. But now Gobi, my corn snake, who is an albino, he's doing perfectly fine, like Brian said, because they were bred so much that they did so well.
Now, I'm not saying that you're gonna breed the wobble out of spider, because I mentioned earlier in the vlog, you can't breed the wobble out of a spider, but that doesn't mean that you can't improve it and just kind of work on it.
You can't compare them to albinos because they're fine now. Spiders are not. Spiders have been around for 20 plus years, and they are most certainly not fine. Then he roasts the IHS for 3 minutes, blaming them, and he blames them for like potentially being the future of people losing their livelihoods by a ban that doesn't do anything. The poor International Herp Society is just being torn apart by this guy, blaming them for the loss of jobs. First of all, they can't control what they're selling online or direct to consumer. They can right now only control these expos that they are working with or whatever, because this is not an authoritative thing by any governments. It's just the organizations, so they can still sell them.
And again, I am gonna make this point again so that you are crystal clear on this. I am not saying that I am not in the best interest of the animal, because I am.
I can't like prove him wrong because I don't know what his intentions are. This is an opinion, this is a mindset. You can't prove a mindset, but purely based on just what I've heard in this video, it's hard to tell how much of the case this is. Even pretend he was making no money off these. If they were free, he just gave the spiders away because they were so beautiful. You're still putting the beauty of it over the welfare, and I think that goes a lot with things like different dog breeds where they're just so beautiful, they look so cool, they're so big or mean or nice or small or fuzzy or fluffy or whatever. Even if the person loves this little dog, they still put their own interests over that of the dog because the dog is not enjoying its life. But the person is enjoying the dog's life because it's just so cute. Hopefully he does have the best intentions, but personally it's hard to tell if I agree with that. Today it's spiders. Maybe next week it's piebalds. Maybe the year after it's all colors. So this is where he's referring to what's gonna be banned next, what's next. He's using what I would consider a lot of fear mongering here, and fear is by far the #1 marketing tool, maybe other than sex, but those are the two. So if you apply marketing tactics to this video, in a way he's kind of just using the same tactics to defend this and then in a way market the snake, right? Again, a lot of things I'm saying in this are just my opinion. I do not cover the opinion of everyone against the spider ball python. That's what the comment section's for. We can find out if people agree with me. But then he said next week, what if piebalds are banned because they are white? That's racist. And then maybe the year after, all colors are banned. That's why we do this one step at a time. I'm not gonna blatantly support the IHS if they wanna do all this stuff. I don't know if you asked them if they were going to. I have a feeling they're not going to. But if that day comes where first they ban spiders and then a week from today they say piebalds are next, then I'm gonna jump on that Brian train and support you with it in every way that I can. This is not a binary thing, it's not black and white. It's a very case-by-case basis, and I think that's very important that we do this, and not that we assume just because this one thing happened that it's going to keep happening. I think Brian knows this himself. Again, that's just me thinking, but it feels like just a way to get people on his side. I don't know.
I've spent my entire life trying to disprove people's opinion of reptiles.
I'm sure you've done a good job at that. I love all those snake bite, snake, angry, snake, strangle, ooh, gonna kill me, uh-oh, it escaped, oh boy. Yeah, great, I'm sure that helps. I'm aware that he's helped a lot of people change their minds. You can just read his comment section and see how many people he's positively affected. But it's not a GoHerping video without mentioning this clickbait. And then he reiterates how he thinks people should be able to make their own decisions. And I think that is a really big thing here. Like, I haven't made a video about it before, but I talk about spiders a lot. And it's our decision as a company to not sell spider ball pythons. It's obviously Brian's decision to sell them when they have less of a wobble. So I'll say the spectrum goes like our company here sells no spider ball pythons. Brian sells spiders that have very minimal issues or wobble. And then there's the other companies that just don't care at all. And by far, this is the biggest group where most people don't care, they're just gonna breed them. But then Brian goes the extra step to try and do his best to get that wobble down. But let's say BHB is the best company on earth. That means that every company under him is going to do worse. And that just because his company is doing the best that they can, doesn't mean that all others are doing the same. So if that's the change that we want to see, then that means we have to force every single other person to carefully regulate these animals, but that's going to be near impossible because it's a generally small community here and it's hard to push against a company that's just making so much money, because money really is the only thing that'll affect most companies. And again, that's not talking about BHB, that's talking about companies that really do just sell any spider or anything that's worth money, no matter how bad they are. Side note, I mean, just look at other species sold, like tokay geckos, they're perfectly legal, they're sold all the time. Look at a tokay gecko from our company. Here he is. Ah, beautiful, right? These are the tokay geckos at Repticon. They were a couple booths over from us selling this garbage. This person is self-regulating. So that's why I think that not only should certain things be regulated morph-wise, but they need to be regulated quality-wise. And I think that's kind of like the best agreement we can make here, and that we need to regulate people's quality over blanket statements with this stuff. Why is this breeder not banned? I won't say their name. If you go to North Carolina Repticons, just look for them, you'll see them. Don't yell at them or anything, please, that's not gonna go well. But why are these people not banned? So again, I think that mixes into how this is not a binary issue and how banning just one thing is not gonna fix everything, because there are so many little issues. But I think that this is personally, I would say this is in the right step. What do you think? Are you on my side? Are you on Brian's side? Are you between us? Can you see both of our opinions? Are we both wrong? Do you have a whole third opinion that doesn't line up with either? Let me know. Finally did a video on Brian, people wanted it, so there's that. Something I forgot to completely cover is, if you have a spider ball python, please don't feel bad about it, because chances are you didn't know about this issue. Even if you knew it had a slight wobble, maybe it was just, like, maybe someone described it to you like Brian did in this video, and that it's a tiny thing, doesn't affect them, it's fine. My hope with this video is that it shows you that maybe this is not the best decision for the future. Kind of like if I say that, oh, this place is a bad place to buy for, don't feel bad for buying from them if you didn't know. Just use this to learn from in the future. And I hope your spiders do well in the best way that they can. So that is the spider debate with me and Brian Barczyk. And if you watched all the way to the end, thank you. Because you probably did more than half the people commenting on this video that are just gonna spew opinions no matter what their opinion is. It's best to watch a video before you comment on it, just saying, all right? So, I'm Alex, and thanks for watching.
Hey Ethan, what is going on? Of course, Brian here at the Reptarium. All my animals behind me. Got Andrea back there. Just wanted to say hey, and I hear you're like an avid Fortnite player. I tell you what, I'm not very good at it. Noah's actually pretty good, but I know the more you play, the better you get. So I know you'll have an epic victory royale pretty soon. Just keep on going away. And again, thank you for your support. And if you ever need any encouragement from me, please reach out to me. Definitely work your butt off on Fortnite and you'll be really good. In the meantime, from Bowser and Lucy in the back over there and all the other animals, have an absolutely amazing day. Dab. Dab.